Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and this is another Sharks Weekly recap, this time of week 25. So this was a slightly better week than the previous one, as at least the Sharks managed to win a game, this being the second to last week of the regular season, and it started off with a game against the Detroit Red Wings, one of the bottom teams in the Eastern Conference, and a team the Sharks have already beaten once this season. And while there was a small comeback staged by the end of the game, the Sharks' 3-goal hole that they ended up falling into at about early in the third period was just too much to come back from, and the Sharks lost by a single goal, 3-2. The Sharks then hosted the Chicago Blackhawks, a team that the Sharks have beaten twice already this season, and by pretty big margins in terms of scores, 7-3 and 5-2. And once again, just like in the Detroit game, the Sharks fall into a 3-goal deficit, this time rather quickly in just the first 10 or 11 minutes of the first period. And once again, the Sharks try to stage a comeback. At a point, this game does end up tied 4-4, but the Blackhawks lock it down after getting the 5th goal, and the Sharks lose by another 1-goal deficit, 5-4. The next game was against the Golden Knights, the Sharks hosting them. Of course, they were the home team, and this was probably the most important game of the week, as the Sharks are destined to face off against the Golden Knights in the first round of the playoffs, and their previous game against the Golden Knights was a thrashing at the hands of them, 7-3. And the Sharks managed to break out of their 7-game losing streak by taking this one in overtime off of a Brent Burns overtime game winner power play goal, 4-3. So huge 2 points, and that locked them in for home ice in the first round. The final game of the week on Sunday was against the Calgary Flames, a team that is above them, the only team in the Western Conference that finds themselves above the Sharks. And this was a game that if the Flames won, they clinched the first place in the Pacific Division, and as such, first place in the Western Conference. And the Sharks just not looking good enough, only with 15 shots, which is a season low, and they lose it 5-3. Onto the offensive contributors of the week, it seemed like it was mostly just concentrated within these 4 players. Tomas Hertl leading the way with 3 goals and 3 assists, now with 35 goals on the year and 70 points for the first time in his career on the year. Logan Couture, 1 goal, 5 assists, for himself also getting 70 points on the year for his first time in his career. Timo Meier, 2 goals to put himself up to 30, as well as 3 assists for 5 points, 66 points on the year. And then Kevin Labanc, a goal and 3 assists, giving him 4 points on the week for 54 points on the year. He also has 39 assists, which is actually only 1 assist back from his point total of all of last season. Otherwise, past these 4 players, a bunch of players had 2 points, like Thornton and Burns and Donskoy and Nyquist, but these were really the 4 main players during the majority of these games, or at least the 4 main players putting up points during the majority of these games. For the news of the week, as I said, the Sharks, not only are they destined to face off, it is completely guaranteed at this point. The Golden Knights cannot fall out of 3rd place in the Pacific Division. The Sharks cannot fall out of or climb past 2nd place in the Pacific Division. And so that matchup that we have seen 4 times this season, that the Sharks are 2-2 in, so not a horrible record, although the 2 losses not great and the 2 wins quite close. They'll face off against the Golden Knights, the team that eliminated them in the playoffs last season. Bound to be a very interesting series, bound to be probably at least a top 3 series in the first round in the NHL. In my opinion, I've said this before, that this could very well be the best series of the first round going into the playoffs, because these 2 teams definitely do not like each other. These 2 teams are some of the best teams in the Western Conference and best teams in the league, really. And if they weren't facing off against each other, they could probably both make it quite far, and unfortunately they are facing each other in the first round. So one of these big powerhouses, the Sharks being a huge contender and the Golden Knights having made it to the Stanley Cup Finals last season, will be out in the first round just by the end of April. On to the injuries. I had predicted that Joe Pavelski would play in the back-to-back against the Vegas Golden Knights and the Calgary Flames. I had long time predicted Erik Karlsson might return for those 2 games. Neither of those things happened. So Joe Pavelski, it'll be interesting to see if he actually gets any games besides maybe the last one coming up to these last 3 games of the season on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Just because now the Sharks have nowhere to go upwards, nowhere to fall downwards, and as such these games are practically meaningless besides just trying to get back into the win column and establish a good, winning culture in these last couple of games going into the playoffs. So we'll see if Joe Pavelski and Erik Karlsson will get a couple of these games just to try and get back up to game speed moving into that series against the Vegas Golden Knights, or if they will just be rested until that game 1. Finally, we come up to the last week of the season. As I said, the Sharks playing 3 games against the Canucks, the Oilers, and the Colorado Avalanche. Only the Colorado Avalanche of those 3 teams are a playoff team. They're bound to be a wildcard team to potentially face off against the Calgary Flames, or maybe end up getting or drawing whoever wins the Central Division. So not the toughest games. We'll see if the Sharks decide to rest some players. Maybe someone like Joe Thornton sits out. Maybe someone like Brent Burns sits out. Who knows? Brent Burns, actually, I would probably doubt, but maybe somebody else. Maybe some rookies up from the AHL, like a Jacob Middleton on defense, get an opportunity over someone like Joakim Ryan. We'll definitely see what the Boer decides to do here. But finally, the final week of the regular season. It's been a long 82 games, but we will soon be at what everybody has been waiting for basically the entire year, the Stanley Cup playoffs. Class dismissed.